I have a desire to be able to share Christ with many people, and I believe that media, television, right here, using YouTube, is a powerful way of getting it across. But there's always the question of money. How are you going to be able to finance such a thing of being able to have a television program? The question is one that I think reflects on the question of how did Jesus get the money to do what he wanted to do? Remember, he wanted to leave all possessions. He wanted to gather together first 12 apostles, and then we find a large number of disciples, maybe 72 disciples, along with women that are dedicated to moving without any home, without any visible means of support, to share the good news. We know that he told Matthew, who was a tax collector in a very prominent place in Israel, to leave his tax collector's place. He told Peter, who was perhaps a successful fisherman, to leave his nets. Did he just rely perhaps on their savings? Where did he get the money from day to day to be able to give food to the apostles, to the disciples, and to the women that were there? We know that he was able to multiply loaves and fish. Did he do the same thing with money? I don't think so. I think that if we look into the meaning of what happens, we find that Jesus went first to some women in Galilee and asked them, would you please give me some financial help, because I want to go with a group of men and women and go throughout all of Galilee and in around Jerusalem and preach the good news, but I need financial help. And these women, and Luke tells us about this, were able to give of their life savings to do that. We also know in the complication of trying to understand this financial situation, that in the midst of gathering money, and perhaps this is what he did when he went to talk to some of the wealthy people, asking them, would you help me to do things? That he appointed a man by the name of Judas to be the one who carried the money sack. Now, carrying the money sack was important because there were a lot of bills, and that was a big concern, and Jesus knew about that. But at the Last Supper, there's an interesting little insight into the financial organization of Jesus and the disciples and apostles. When Judas decides to go off and trade Jesus and pass him over as a traitor to the Jewish leaders, the people that notice him leaving the upper room comment, oh, he's leaving in order to give money to the poor. Well, the little simple statement says that along with being concerned about making sure that people who were disciples and apostles had enough to eat and the clothes to wear and places to stay, there was also a great sense of generosity in Jesus. And this called him to reach out and care for the poor, even out of I can imagine, the meager amount of monies that they had. We get an insight into the direction of Jesus in the community by looking at the early church. In the Acts of the Apostles, we have the story of how people, after Jesus ascended, tried to live the gospel. And we know that the challenge was one of giving up all of their wealth and living in community. And the Acts of the Apostles says they gave up all their money and they shared it for the common need. Well, the challenge is one for me of certainly being able to try to preach the gospel also and not having enough money, but knowing that Christ is with me in that realm, and that we all, not just those that are preaching, but those that are being preached to, need to be willing to share. If we see a dream, if we see a strong desire to change the world, that we move in that direction. Think about that, if you would, the challenge of being people who let go of money in order to allow the true preaching of the evangelization and the good news of Christ.